Canadians are going to the polls on Monday in what's seen as one of the country's most significant elections in a long time. The governing centre-left Liberals were set for defeat at the hands of the Conservatives, but they've now made a comeback in the polls.
And this follows the resignation of Justin Trudeau and the election last month of Mark Carney as leader and Prime Minister. Professor at the University of Waterloo, Anna Esselment, explains why this is such a unique election for Canada.
It is very exciting over here in Canada right now. So this is a very unique election. About 3 months ago, predictions as to who might win on Monday were quite drastically different than what they're shaping up to be, with the main differences being that our former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stepped down. U.S. President Donald Trump decided that he wanted to impose some tariffs and make Canada the 51st state. And then we had a leadership election where the former Bank of Canada and Bank of England, Mark Carney, won. And all of a sudden, the election has turned completely around, with possibly the chance of the Liberals winning a majority government, which no one would have suspected even 3 months ago would be the outcome.
Here in Australia, we are into the final week of our federal election campaign too. So how does the Canadian system work? Voting isn't compulsory, I understand. And what's the choice like for Canadians in terms of parties?
Yeah, so similar to the Australian system is we do have more, we have a multi-party competition. So there are usually 4 or 5 parties that run a full slate of candidates. So the main parties in Canada are the Liberal Party, which is a centrist party, the Conservatives, which are more to the right, the New Democratic Party, which is to the left of the Liberals, and then we have the Bloc Québécois, which is a Quebec sovereigntist party, and the Green Party, which have won, 1 to 2 seats in the last election. What's interesting about this election is that because the ballot question is who can sort of defend Canadian interests against the American president, it's becoming a 2-horse race where it's the Liberals versus the Conservatives. So we're seeing a collapse of the support with the NDP. We are actually seeing a bit of a collapse in Quebec with the Bloc Québécois. So more Quebecers are actually supporting the Liberals this time. And this is a very unusual thing to happen in the Canadian election. I'd say the other thing, Australians do have mandatory voting, which we do not have as Canadians, but we had a record turnout of Canadians during our advance polls. So 7.3 million Canadians have already voted in this election. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will see a high voter turnout in the end, but it does indicate that there are many Canadians very interested in this election. They are paying attention to this election and appear to be voting in this election. So if we hit 68, 69, 70, 71% turnout, that's a high turnout for a federal election in our country.
And so that turnout is kind of indicating that that's as a result of that combination of factors, if you like, the resignation of Justin Trudeau, then US President Trump's tariffs, and of course some other policies as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess what I would say is when President Trump started calling Justin Trudeau Governor Trudeau, and what we thought was kind of joking about the annexation of Canada and becoming the 51st state, Canadians have, I would say, kind of a very polite patriotism. So it comes out a lot during Olympic gold hockey games or the Stanley Cup playoffs with hockey here. But I think also when provoked, when we have, we hear things like what President Trump has been saying, Canadians will react. We are actually quite proud of who we are. We are proud of our country, and we will react to those. And I think part of this now is how this ballot question has changed in our election, and it is about who will defend ourselves against Trump. And we have 2 very different figures in terms of the leaders of the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party. Mark Carney, who was, as I said, someone who has governed through tough times in terms of being the governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England during Brexit. And we have Pierre Poilievre, who's a leader of the Conservative Party, who's been a politician since he was in his 20s. So he got involved when he was young. But Canadians are thinking about who's the steady hand, who will be the steady hand to work it through. And right now, as I said, the Liberals are ahead by 3, and it looks like Canadians are definitely putting, at this point, with the polls where they are, trust in Mark Carney and what they see that he can do for the country in terms of where we're at with our relations with the United States.
So how does this play out? Give me an idea of the timeline. How long does it take in Canada for a result generally?
Yeah, well, so Monday night. So we have different time zones. Obviously, in Canada, we're a very large country, but when the ballots and the election closes, it starts to count immediately, and usually we will have some network calling it usually within a couple of hours. And an interesting thing is that normally there's only, in most ridings, 4 or 5 people on a ballot list. We have one movement going on right now where the Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre, there are 90 people on the ballot, and Elections Canada is trying to figure out how to handle sort of 90 people on this ballot. It's just sort of a movement to get more people in that particular riding, but we will know within, usually it's a couple of hours, as the polls close across the country, and we will know who has won the election.